Hello YouTube, welcome to the Card Combo Show with me, Chocobilly. Just a quick reminder that once we do get to 250 subscribers, I will be running a competition where you can win 3 of the most recent Opus booster packs. So, pretty good, if you ask me. I'll ship anywhere in the world, so it doesn't matter. Anyway, this week we are focusing on villains. And the cards I'm looking at are the Magus Sisters from Opus 9, Rufus from Opus 8, Vayne from Opus 9, Kefka from Opus 10, and Garland from Opus 3. Okay, so the Magus Sisters, they're an EX burst forward with 4 CP, 7k wind. When the Magus Sisters enter the field, you may search for one card and put it into the break zone. When the Magus Sisters is put from the field into the break zone, you may remove one card named the Magus Sisters in your break zone from the game. When you do so, play the Magus Sisters from your break zone onto the field dull. So similar to the Opus 1 Vanille, which removed a Hecaton share and then replayed herself back onto the field. But obviously the intention is that when you play them, they search one of themselves, you put it into the break zone, so when they die, they can then come back onto the field. But the Magus Sisters are a fantastic way to be able to actually just search something from your deck and to put it into the break zone. And there's lots of cards, especially these days, which utilize cards in your break zone. Not to mention you've got all the standards like Phoenix and whatnot, so if you want a forward there ready to Phoenix out, you can use this card to get those cards there. Anyway, so the Oracle of Light. When Oracle Light is put from the field into the break zone, you may remove the Oracle Light from the game. But when you do so, choose one job sign of the 7th Dawn in your break zone, play it onto the field. Oh, play on field dull even. So this is good because you can obviously use Magus to go search out something big like the Ishtola that came with the Oracle of Light, or you go for something like Thancred, 7 CP Thancred, you know, any Scion, to be honest. But yeah, they're just the first few that come to mind, and then obviously Oracle Light dies to whatever, you know, you could cast a Fanbrit. And then that can go search you, or get you that Scion from the break zone, play onto the field. Pretty good. You got Titania, so being able to use Magus Sisters to probably get yourself a monster and put that in the break zone, because summons and forwards and backups is not. What is it? You need a so you need a forward, a backup, a monster, or something. So you know, getting summons, forwards, and backups generally into the break zone isn't that hard. But unless you're running like quite a monster-heavy deck, getting a monster into the break zone can be kind of awkward. So yeah, using something like the Magus Sisters to get that monster there makes life easier for you. Une. So, when Une enters the field, choose 2 summons, each with a different cost in your break zone. Your opponent selects one summon among them. You may cast the other summon without paying the cost. If you cast it, remove the summon from the game after use instead of putting it into the break zone. So this is a great way to be able to search a nice summon, so like something big like Raiden or Phoenix, put it in the break zone, and maybe you've got a couple of nice summons there, so you can play Une onto the field, and then you've got a choice between Raiden and Phoenix. Then your opponent's like, well, this sucks, but they have to make a decision nonetheless. So it's a good way to be able to just get that summon there, ready to cast through Une. Puck. I talked about this card last week, and I still love the card. But yeah, being able to put a 1 CP or 2 CP forward of whatever element, to be honest, and just be able to use that and then play Puck to bring them back onto the field. Puck's pretty good, to be honest. The fact that he can play 2 cards and he's a 4 CP, so you're only paying 2 CP per of those cards, which might sound like you're paying over the cost because you're only bringing in 1 CP, but you're also gaining a backup from it, and those cards are entering the field probably synergize with something else you've got going on in your deck, and not to mention they should have enter the field abilities as well. Ifrita. So there's obviously a new Ifrita coming with Opus 14, but being able to use Magus Sisters to put an Ifrita into the break zone to then get you ever closer to using Ifrita's ability, or text of select, you get to select one of the 3, or if you have a total of 5 card name Ifrita or Ifrit in the break zone, then you get to choose 3 of 3, which is great because you effectively get to deal 10k to something, 3k to everything else, and choose a monster over 3 or less and break it. That's pretty good. Go-Go. So if a forward in your break zone has Haste, First Strike, or Brave, Go-Go gains those abilities. You have to bear in mind that they have to have those abilities as the actual keyword text on the card. It can't be something which gains Haste or gains Brave through another means, even if you are like the damage prerequisite or whatever. So yeah, but being able to put something like, I don't know, the Lightning Freya into the break zone, she starts with Haste and First Strike. I personally always like to go with the card has gone from my brain, but there's lots of good cards you can put into the break zone, and using something like Magus Sisters to get it there and then play Go-Go, who then becomes quite threatening, is good fun. Hooded Man. So obviously you can't play Hooded Man and Kane at the same time, but when Hooded Man enters the field, choose one category 4 forward other than Hooded Man in your break zone, add it to your hand. So it kind of gives Magus Sisters that one more lease of life. So even after you've removed a couple of Magus Sisters from the game, and Magus Sisters then kicks the bucket, goes to the break zone, can't bring herself back, you can then play Hooded Man to get her back to your hand to play again. Or play them again, even. But obviously it's a good way to be able to just keep on getting more cards from your deck into the break zone if that's what you want them to be. But also Hooded Man, at the end of each of your turns, activate all the category 4 forwards you control. So that includes the Magus Sisters as well, because they are a category 4 character. So, you know, Magus Sisters could have kicked the bucket, you remove a Magus Sisters from the break zone to then bring them back onto the field, but they come back in dull. If you've got Hooded Man there, it means at the end of the turn, they reactivate. Not bad. Innocence! So, if you have a card named Innocence in your break zone, Innocence gains some crazy abilities. But yeah, to be able to say you've got Innocence on the field, you play Magus Sisters, you go find yourself another Innocence, put that in the break zone, job's a good one. Right, Rufus. When Rufus enters the field, you may search for one job member of the Turks and add it to your hand, and when Rufus or a job member of the Turks you control is put from the field into the break zone, choose one active forward your opponent controls, deal up 5,000 damage. It's a 4 CP EX burst forward, lightning with 5k power. So Manasvin Warmech just makes his killing power a bit more, so you know you could potentially attack. If he gets blocked, he can then deal 7k on the block to something, and then when he kicks the bucket, or if another Turks dies for whatever reason, then you can increase the damage that Rufus will be dealing with his 5k. Now it is a shame that he has to target an active forward, because that means that, you know, he isn't as good for blocking, because the forward that will be attacking will obviously become dull unless it has Brave. So that does kind of suck in that regard, but you can still increase his killing ability by using Manasvin Warmech with that. And also it's worth noting that obviously if you do use something like Reno, the 5k damage from Rufus is coming from Rufus, not from Reno. So yeah, so there you go then. So obviously Reno, choose one active forward, deal it 3k damage. Now you can use Manasvin Warmech to increase the damage Reno does, or Rufus does, it doesn't really matter, but if, say, you've got a couple of big, or you've got one big forward and one smaller forward, you can use Reno to kill the smaller forward, and then Manasvin Warmech to boost up Rufus's power to then kill the bigger forward, which is great. Or you can use Manasvin Warmech on Reno to be able to kill 2 more middling forwards. Or you can just, you know, deal 10k to one thing if you want to, provided it's active. And you got Cloud. So dull, put one category 7 forward into the break zone. Search for one forward, cost 1 CP more than the forward put into the break zone. Play it onto the field. You can own his ability during your main phase. So yeah, you use Cloud to put Rufus into the break zone. You then get to deal 5k to an active forward, hopefully kill it, and then bring something else into the field. And there's lots of good things that you can do with that. So hypothetically, you could use Rufus to deal 5k to something, doesn't kill it, but then you could be bringing in something like Orlando when he enters the field. Choose a damaged forward, break it, and he is only 1 CP above Rufus as well. But there's lots of really good combos that you can use with this Cloud and this Rufus, because there's lots of good 5 CP cards. Talking of which, Tifa! So if you control a card named Cloud, then Tifa becomes a bit cheaper, and can be paid with any CP element, but the category 7 forwards other than Tifa you control gain plus 2,000 power and Brave. So Rufus becomes a bit more powerful, but also at damage 3, the 7 forwards you control cannot be broken by opposing summons or abilities that don't deal damage. I mean, that doesn't really matter in this regard, but it does mean that having the likes of Rude and Reno on the field with Rufus and Tifa become scary, to be honest, because Reno, he gains plus 2,000 power if you've got Rufus there anyway, so he becomes a 10k. He also gains haste as well if you control a member of the Turks other than himself. Same applies to Rude, and what's good about this is actually it's not a job member of the Turks forward, so it can be the backups as well, so you could have like forward Reno and backup Rude, or vice versa, which is the way I used to run it. So having the forward Rude, because Rude gains first strike, and I personally think first strike is better than haste. It depends on the deck style obviously, but it's just more of an enduring ability. Haste is only good once you play that forward. First strike is always going to be good there. But yeah, Rude, he will gain plus 3k off of Rufus, but then also gain plus 2 off of Tifa. So he's then a 12k forward, first strike with Brave, and if you're at damage 3, also cannot be dealt, what was it again? Cannot be broken by someone's abilities that don't deal damage. So, you know, it becomes a lot harder for your opponent to deal with. And if they do kick the bucket, they get to deal 5k to something. Not bad. Glauca, so obviously using Glauca to reduce the cost of Rufus, who will then set you something which you could then play onto the field. So if you've got Glauca there and you've got 5 backups ready to go, you can pay 3 for your Rufus to then get either Brood or Renner and then play them onto the field for 2. And you also get to give 2 instances of Glauca's enter the field ability to buff Glauca as well if you wanted. Kuchaspel, the damage dealt to forward your opponent controls cannot be reduced this turn because 5k damage isn't the most, unfortunately, isn't not going to kill a lot of things, so making sure that if there's a Minwu effect there, that won't apply by using something like Kuchaspel. Alright, Vayne. All the forwards your opponent controls gain at the end of your turn if you don't pay 1, break this forward. Now this is a strange card because he gives your opponent's forwards an ability, which is something we haven't really seen before. Well, we hadn't seen before. This is Opus 9, so a fair while ago now. But yeah, it's obviously a form of tax that everyone loves, and I personally really like it, but it's not particularly playable because the instant Vayne comes down, he dies. That's the way it goes, unfortunately. He's a 5 CP and 9k forward, so, you know, he's a bit bigger anyway, and he does have a decent ability. So, something like Arden. Now, this isn't actually to combo with Vayne, it's just a funny interaction which I've come across a couple of times, and I figured I'd mention it here. So, when Arden is put from the field into the break zone by your opponent's summons or abilities, play Arden onto the field until the end of the turn. Now, is this Vayne's ability, or is it Arden's ability because he has gained that? Actually, I think it's Arden has gained that ability, so even though technically Vayne is giving the ability to Arden, Arden's text now includes, at the end of your turn, if you don't pay 1, break this forward, which means that he is killing himself and he actually won't return onto the field because he can't. If he did, hypothetically, say at the end of the turn, Vayne did kill Arden. Actually, Arden wouldn't return to the field until your opponent's turn, because of the fact that Arden can only return onto the field at the end of the turn, but you have already started the end of the turn rule processing, which means that he will have to return to the field at the end of the next turn, which would be your opponent's turn. So he comes in at the end of your opponent's turn, which means he can attack on the your following turn. You see where I'm going with this, but yeah, it's just a kind of weird and wonky interaction. Scale Toad. So obviously tax is a great way to lose friends and make enemies, but you know, you're going to lean into it hard. So at the end of your opponent's turn, if your opponent has 2 cards or more in his or her hand, your opponent discards 1 card from his or her hand. Now Vayne, obviously, if your opponent has a couple of forwards, they're going to want to pay the 1 to make sure it doesn't die, provided they haven't killed Vayne, obviously. But then also Scale Toad means that they're going to have to discard more cards as well. Generally, with the cost of Vayne, you are going to be wanting to just pay the 1 with a backup, and then Scale Toad is the cards from hand. So your opponent's probably going to go all in and try and kill Vayne by getting the cards from their hand, because otherwise they'll end up having to just pay stupid amounts. But that's why you provide protection with Vayne. But if they can't kill him, then they're going to have to start discarding from hand. And at which point, if they see Scale Toad and Vayne on the field and they can't do anything about either, your opponent's probably going to start discarding the cards to keep the forwards alive, because if they have a certain amount of cards left in hand, then they're going to discard it anyway. So this is a great way to just kind of guarantee that they're getting the discard. Right, White Tiger Sea, so this obviously is more tax, but also it's more protection for Vayne as well. So when 1 or more forwards you control are chosen by your opponent's summons, its effect is cancelled by your opponent if your opponent doesn't pay 3. There's a few different variations of this. There's the other White Tiger Sea, the Kunmi, which I think if your opponent casts a summon, you put it into the break zone, they have to pay 2, otherwise it gets cancelled, which is good because this White Tiger is only good if your forwards are being targeted. So if there's any form of board wipe in there, not so great. But still, again, it's more tax the opponent has to consider, and 3 is a significant boost for your opponent to have to play to make sure something isn't cancelled. And ultimately, it probably will be the likes of Diablos that will be killing Vayne, and they have to target him, so they have to pay the additional 3. Then you've got Anima. So let's say, hypothetically, Vayne's ability actually works, and you do get to kill something in your opponent's field. Then you can dull something else out as well. So maybe your opponent's got a couple of forwards, and they don't want one of them to die, but the other one they're happy for it to kick the bucket. So they pay the 1 for 1 forward, the other forward dies, and then you can use Anima to then dull out the other forward. So it's still a good way to remove things out of the way so you can start swinging through. Sid Randall Remedy. Now this will be a surprise to no one because, again, very much tax. But what's good about this is the fact that Vayne's ability kind of usurps theirs because of the fact it's, you know, breaking things. Unless they have forwards that they're willing to break, so something like Porum. But still, generally your opponent won't want their forwards to be breaking. And having Sid Randall and Remedy down means that if they're playing something onto the field, not from their hand, they're going to have to pay the 2, and then they're going to have to pay the 1 to make sure that it doesn't break in 2 instances, at which point Remedy might actually stop them from recurring anything from their break zone, because that's just a lot to pay to make sure that thing gets there. And again, with Sid Randall, when it enters the field, your opponent has to pay 1, otherwise that forward becomes dull. So they're kind of maybe thinking, actually, I can't afford to pay that 1 for Sid Randall because I have to use that 1 to pay for Vayne to make it so that my other forwards don't die. So it's a nice way to be able to just make your opponent think, actually, this particular thing I was going to do wasn't worth it, recurring things isn't worth it, and yeah, you get more dull forwards. Kefka, I love this card. The card is fantastic. When I found this card, when this card was released, it was in a lot of my decks for a long time. But he is a 4 CP Earth forward with 7,000 power EX burst. When Kefka attacks, choose 1 forward you control and 1 forward your opponent controls and break them. When a character your opponent controls is put from the field to the break zone, you may pay 1. When you do so, draw a card. Pretty good. So you combo this with Opus 14 Garland. Now I know the card hasn't been released yet, but I want to talk about it. Again, sorry for the crappy resolution, but this is the first one I could find. When a backup is put from the field into the break zone, draw 1 card. That's pretty good, because that combined with Kefka's ability of when a character your opponent controls is put from the field into the break zone, you may pay 1. That includes if they use any action abilities that require a break as well. So if they use a break backup ability, Garland will get you a card, but then you can pay 1 with Kefka to also get you another card. That's fun. Shuyin. So when Shuyin enters the field, choose 1 forward or 1 forward with a power inferior to Shuyin's. You gain control of this forward until the end of the turn. You gain control of that forward, you then attack with Kefka, you break that forward you gained control of, and another of your opponent's forwards. So you managed to break 2 of their forwards in one go. Obviously Shuyin isn't great, so maybe using something like Bismarck first to half that forward's power, and then playing Shuyin is an expensive play, but if you get to break 2 of your opponent's forwards and still gain a forward with Shuyin, it's not the worst thing in the world. The Emperor. So, when the Emperor is put from the field into the break zone, you may search for 1 card named the Emperor and put it from the field, or put it into the break zone. If you do so, play the Emperor from the break zone onto the field dull at the end of the turn. And if you have 2 or more Emperor in the break zone, your opponent discards a card when he enters. So, similar to the Magus Sisters earlier, but basically you can attack with Kefka, put Emperor into the break zone, and then break one of your opponent's forwards. At the end of your turn, Emperor comes back in, your opponent discards a card. Not bad. Galuf. During each attack phase, Galuf cannot be broken. So you attack with Kefka, you choose Galuf, he doesn't die, and you choose a forward your opponent controls, that does die. Simple, but effective. Ovalia! Yay, this is where the fun begins. So obviously you can use Ovalia's S ability to make so when a forward goes from field to the break zone, it can then re-enter dull. And also you can use it to give that forward haste, which I always forget about. Don't forget about that because it is really good. So you combo this with the likes of Agrias or Ramza, then you start having fun. Now obviously you can use the S on Agrias. If Agrias on the field, you attack with Kefka, or hopefully you attack with Agrias first. You know, you could even play Agrias onto the field, use Ovalia's S ability, so an Agrias can attack. Then you attack with Kefka, you put Agrias and a forward you control from the field into the break zone. And then Agrias will re-enter. If you combo this with Ramza, actually what starts happening is you have Ramza constantly retrieving things from the break zone onto the field if they can, but it doesn't have to be the same card. So hypothetically, you could attack with Kefka and, I don't know, break Ramza. He would then re-enter through Ovalia's S ability. You could grab the Ovalia S you just used with Ramza, bring that to hand, and then play an Agrias from hand onto the field. So actually you're breaking 2 forwards from Kefka. Well, you're breaking a forward with Kefka, and then Agrias entering the field is going to -7 something, and also get you a card, because you've got control Ovalia. And also, when you broke either Agrias or Ramza, Ovalia is going to draw you a card as well. Not to mention the fact you can also pay the 1 with Kefka to draw you another card. So through this combo, you can effectively gain 3 cards to your hand and only pay 1. Now obviously you are using the Ovalia S as well, but like I said, Ramza can get you that S card back to hand. And finally, Garland. So, during your turn, if Garland receives damage, reduce the damage by 2,000 instead. And then the Soul of Chaos S ability. Pay X and a dull. Choose 1 forward, deal it 6,000 damage and 1,000 more damage for each CP paid as X. So, if you pay 4 CP, then you will deal 6 and 4, 10,000. Now, it isn't 2 instances of damage, unfortunately. So, it will just be not 6 and 4, but just 10. But Shantoto, so you use Garland on Shantoto because Garland doesn't restrict you on which forward you choose, so you can use Garland and just, I don't know, let's say you pay 3 and you'll deal 9k to Shantoto. Shantoto will then flicker that 9k around the board, including onto your Garland, but during your turn, Garland receives 2,000 less damage, so actually he won't die to this effect. Now obviously it won't be too hard for your opponent to finish it off, but ultimately you've done a 9k board wipe against your opponent's field, which is pretty good, and it does remove the forwards as well. Manasvin Warmeg, now again, you can pay 1 CP, and that will increase the damage he does by 2,000, but it's the total damage, so it's not increasing the 6,000 to 8,000, and then the 1,000 to 3,000, it's just increasing the total amount. But it is ultimately, you can pay 1 CP less for Garland's ability, and use that with Manasvin to actually get a bit more bang for your buck, so to speak. Yasmat, so at the beginning of your main phase 1, select one of the 3 following actions, so activate all the characters you control. Activate everything, you then use Garland's S, and you can use all your backups, so you can do 5 plus 6, that's 11k to something, which isn't the worst thing in the world, and then you go to your main phase, and you get to reactivate everything, and you're good to go. Clady, so you can use Garland's ability, obviously that requires him to become dull. You can then use Clady, which again is 1 CP additional, but if it means that you can then stand up Garland to then attack through and deal a point of damage, probably worth it. Beatrix and Gawain. So you can use Beatrix to obviously reduce either Garland's cost or Gawain's cost, and obviously there's the buff to the field as well when you do that, but not to mention the fact that also when Gawain enters the field, you can actually search yourself a Garland to hand as your water, or as your fire knight, and then use that as the S fodder. There's just a nice more consistency. And there we go, folks. I hope you enjoyed. We are creeping ever closer to Opus 14 and episode 50 of the Card Combo Show, and I have a big announcement for when we do get there. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Be lucky, and I'll see you in the next one.